righty. Hello and welcome to Session 6 TCCA 2020. Thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions as Ms. McDonald is presenting, make sure you drop those in chat. And we've got Dr. Toshiba Beasley here. She will be making note of your questions that we can ask Ashli during the session. So I would now like to introduce your presenter for this session, Miss Ashli McDonald. Go ahead and take it away, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for joining me on this Saturday afternoon. And in the afternoon, I know several of y'all have been going through sessions this morning. So I appreciate you hanging in there and coming into my session. So as she was saying, my name is Ashli McDonald, and I am the AVID coordinator and technology integration champion for Willow Ridge High School in Fort Bend ISD. I'm very excited to be here with you today. And this first presentation is going to be, why did I get this grade? And we're going to be focusing on rubrics, how to build them in Schoology. So this is a make and take session. So hopefully if you are already a user of Schoology, you're going to be able to have a sandbox course or your resources that you can kind of play in while we go through things. If you'll look on the screen, I do have a course that if you would like to join in and have access to like some of the presentation materials and things of that nature, you can join it there. The course code is displayed. It is 7TPS 4V56 5PZ7S. And as you enter into that course, there is a discussion post that just says introduce yourself, and I'll give you just a couple of minutes to kind of get in there, and then we'll get in the swing of things. And if you have any questions on how to join, please let me know. And actually, let me type this code into the chat box as well.
I've actually got it on the screen for you, Ashli, and somebody actually already put it in chat as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're wondering how to join a course in Schoology, what you can do is up at the very top where it says courses, you're going to click there, and you will see a My Courses that's very small over in the top right. When you click on that, there is a join course, and this is where you would paste in that access code and then click join, and it'll put you right into the session. Awesome. Wow, look at that. I appreciate y'all so much for joining this. And so you do see that I am giving 2 sessions today. So the first session is going to be in the purple folder, which is why did I get this grade? And then, of course, because you are joining this, you are going to have access to these materials and anything else that I put in extra after the session. So if there's any questions you want to ask, and maybe things you think about, or things, we are creating our own little community in here to also kind of help and support each other. Because right now in this virtual world, we need all the help and support that we can get, right? So with that, I'm going to pull up the presentation. And so the title of this presentation is Why Did I Get This Grade? And it's using Schoology rubrics and criteria to provide meaningful feedback. So just coming through and to let you know a little bit about me, I spent 8 years as a middle school theater teacher. And yes, I survived all of that with my sanity intact. I loved actually being a middle school teacher. And then I received a call from a principal that was a mentor to me, asking me to come and be an avid teacher over at a Title I high school in our district. And if you're not familiar with the avid program, it is a college preparatory program where it gets the middle of the road students prepared for school. It's a lot of first generation students. And so that is definitely something that is near and dear to my heart, as I'm a first generation student. And I was in a program called Upward Bound when I was growing up. So this was definitely something that I wanted to go ahead and be a part of. And after my first year, I actually ended up being the coordinator for the program. And here I am 4 years later, still at the school being with the program. And I teach the seniors and juniors now. In Fort Bend ISD, we do have a teacher leader position that is called the Technology Integration Champion. And so this position is where we actually are trained on how to integrate blended learning and instructional strategies using technology. And I have been in this position for 4 years as well, and I love it. I'm a self-admitted Schoology nerd. I actually found Schoology at the theater convention for Texas teachers, TETA, and it was a rubrics workshop. And so I went in there to kind of see what was going on. And this lady had up on the screen this rubric that graded itself. It added up all on its own once you clicked buttons. And I was so excited. And so I was like, yes, this is something I definitely need to do. And it was mid-year. I came back. I started that next semester with it with my middle school kids. And the doors that it opened up for me after that were just so amazing. And I've been an avid user ever since. I'm a Game of Thrones enthusiast. And, for any of my other nerds in the house, Gryffindor alumna, right? Because as my kids, my students like to tell me now, Harry Potter is so old fashioned, but I will forever be a Harry Potter fan. Okay, so just a little bit about Fort Bend. We do have something that's called Profile of a Graduate. I know that a lot of districts are now kind of moving towards this, but in reference to rubrics and how that supports our Profile of a Graduate within our district is it helps them be equipped with skills for life. It helps them become a more effective communicator and a lifelong learner, as you're going to see as we kind of go over some of the basics first before we get down and really start putting ourselves to work and building our own rubrics. So why do we use rubrics for grading? If you could, in the chat, just go ahead and pop in a couple of comments of why you use rubrics. If you don't use rubrics, what are some things that you might want to know about them or that you could possibly use them for? So I'll give you just a couple of minutes to pop those in. Yes, hello, Sarah Peoples. I see you. Hi, Heather. Yes, middle school. They are still near and dear to my heart. I love the middle school kids, but I definitely enjoy teaching the juniors and the seniors as well. So it's definitely some really rewarding things that happen, especially that senior year as we start working on their college acceptances and stuff. Okay. I see some great answers in here. I see allowing students to self-evaluate. Absolutely. Michaela, I see that you've got rubrics so that kids will understand why they got their grade. Absolutely. That's the whole title of this presentation, is why did I get this grade? Here for student feedback and to make our job easier. I mean, if we're honest, yes, it's definitely to make our jobs easier too, because it helps. I know for me, it definitely helped me when I was trying to grade things. Feedback on learning. Rubrics help students know what is expected. Absolutely. So I seem to have a lot of rubric proponents in here. So I'm definitely excited to hear about that. And so I'm possibly might not be telling you anything new when it comes to the theory of rubrics, but hopefully you will still walk away from this session with how to build rubrics and really kind of formulate those into Schoology. I see great answers. Thank you so much, guys. So one of the reasons that I started with rubrics, and especially in Schoology, is one, due to the content that I teach, a lot of the times it's subjective grading. It's not always a clear-cut right or wrong answer. So what this does is when I'm building my rubrics and I'm putting in the criteria and I'm being very specific with what I'm looking for, it helps clarify for students and parents, because even though we're definitely aiming towards our students, sometimes our parents also need to know what is going on in here. And so it's definitely one of those things that it helped me. It also helps with project-based grading, breaks it down for them. So that's another key element to kind of helping with that subjective grading. It helps with the student understanding. I see someone put in here success criteria. Absolutely. We are really big on learning intentions and success criteria in Fort Bend. And so using the rubrics does give them some of those checkoffs for their success criteria and to gauge how they are doing with their own student ownership of their learning. It gives them some clear expectations. It says, what are we actually looking for? And then, as we were saying with that success criteria, it allows for student reflection. It allows for students to see what areas they're excelling in and where they need to apply themselves. And I think that's really important to note, that it allows for a student to see, I did good in this area. So while a student may not be satisfied with the overall grade, this breaks it down and it gives them at least a moment to say, okay, I may not have understood these parts, but I was successful in this area. So it allows them now to be able to target the areas that they need to grow in a little bit more, versus just having kind of a round grade and they don't really know what it is that they were lacking and what they did well, because our students do need to hear that. So this is one of the things with rubrics that I've kind of noticed over the years, and even with myself, I grew and understood more about what it is I should be putting in there. So what are we assessing? The rubrics overall should be assessing the learning, not the product. And that's definitely something that I've seen probably more so on like the middle school level. And then when it comes to projects, sometimes it's more based on, well, is the project neat? And it's more of a checkoff, and it's not really understanding, well, did the student get the concept? Did they really understand what was going on? It may not be the prettiest project, but did they show the learning? And so I think that's one thing that, especially if you are instructional coach or a teacher leader on your campus, that's something, or even in your PLCs, you'll want to talk about when you're creating your rubrics is, are we assessing product or are we assessing learning? Because if a rubric is assessing the learning, then that also allows for you to give more student choice in how they're demonstrating their learning. Because if a rubric is geared towards, oh, they have to submit a model replica of, this particular unit in history, and it has to be so many feet high, or not feet high, so many inches high, this wide, and you're setting that down, that's more grading product versus you can create a sway, you could create a video, you could create a physical model. Now you're allowing that student to pick how they show you that they understand this learning, but they deliver it in a different method, because your rubric is geared towards understanding the content versus just the product. So in addition to that, that's another thing that I've kind of noticed, and this might be more so on the fine arts end because that was my background. But what I've noticed is when we are developing our rubrics, we tend to put titles such as excellent, superior, and poor, right? And one of the things that I'm really encouraging my campus to start doing is to kind of go to that student learning objectives type language and instead use developing, progressing, proficient, and advanced, so that you can really kind of see where they are on the scale, but it's not misleading to the students. Because I had students that used to say, well, I got a superior on my project in this category, so I don't have any room to grow. That's not the case necessarily. Yes, you may have done very well for this particular project, but we always have room to grow, right? And so that advanced, even though it is the title of advanced, it still kind of leaves that ambiguous area where there can still be room to grow versus, oh, I'm superior, I'm at the very top. So just a little food for thought on that. I don't know if anybody else had kind of maybe thought about those. If you had, go ahead and type that in the chat, or if there's anything that you have noted on your rubrics in particular that you've changed. Okay, I do see a question, and I will come to that, sorry, peoples, especially when we're building into our rubrics, because in Schoology, one of the cool things you can do is you can put in those areas that you need, like having them with complete sentences and stuff like that, and you can kind of scale that, but not make it as weighted as you need for the rest of the items. All right. Advanced. So in the advanced meaning, that on the scale, that means that student has they are at that top tier of understanding for that particular item or whatever learning that you're assessing. But again, a student doesn't always stay at advanced. Sometimes they fall back and they go into proficient, just depending on how you're assessing that learning and how it's displayed. So that definitely comes to one of the things for you where advanced gives you that kind of leg room, because if you say, well, they're superior, and then the next time they come in there, they get a lower marking, they may not understand necessarily why all of a sudden they've gone down a level. Okay, and y'all are definitely asking some good questions that are going to be shown in when we're building. So I really appreciate that, and please bring those back up when we get in there. So Schoology and rubrics. So one of the things in particularly with Schoology that is really kind of cool, and what we'll be showing here in just a little bit, is that Schoology allows for original rubrics to be created using learning objectives. Now, Schoology already has a lot of pre-loaded learning objectives into it, such as our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, or our TEKS, college and career readiness standards, TEKS career and technical education, or our CET TEKS. It has STAR learning objectives in there. It has Common Core learning objectives. And then Schoology also allows for you to create your own original learning objectives into the items. So you have a lot of choices in there, so you can be very specific on what you are assessing. And then as we build out our rubrics, you're able to detail out what it is you're looking for to assess that particular learning objective or standard. All right, learning objectives and Schoology rubrics. So this is just a screenshot, and again, you're going to be able to see this where you can come in and use those preloaded objectives on grading assignments. And so what that does is if your campus or district has bought the enterprise version of Schoology, unfortunately, it's not with the free version, but with the enterprise version, it allows Schoology to actually start compiling data also for you on your student performance. So even if you're using a rubric to assess their learning, if you're using like the essential knowledge and skills, the TEKS in there as one of the grading criteria, however you're scoring that student, it starts building the data right into Schoology where you can pull from the mastery part. And where you can see that is over on the left-hand side of a course. And so again, remember, this is the enterprise, so this would have to be through your district. There is that mastery button. And then if you can see here on the slide, it shows the students up here at the top what it is I was assessing them on. So the learning objective, it will come down here and tell you the percentage overall for the averages. It will tell you for that student what their average is. And then the tiny number that is in the top right corner of each cell is how many times I have assessed that student on that particular standard. So it's probably not as in-depth as maybe some of your PLCs want, but it is a great like snapshot. This also helps you for when you're doing your student, your SLOs for your T-test, that you can kind of pull some of this data, especially if you're not in a core area. I find this very helpful for me because I've always taught electives. And so there's always been this kind of, well, how do I do these things? Because everything I have seen has always been kind of geared towards core. And so it really does kind of help me in having that understanding and being able to translate what I teach as an elective to my administrator or my appraiser so that they can see that I am also working on my student achievement and all that kind of thing. So. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this up here. But again, there will be lots of other times that I give my information out. But I do have my own Gmail account that is the edtechiemcd@gmail.com. And I am on Twitter. And then I have my program's Twitter up here as well, which is the Willow Ridge Avid program. And at this point, we're actually going to start getting our hands ready to dive in and build some of our own Schoology rubrics. So if you don't have Schoology, that's perfectly fine. We are recording and there will be some videos put into this for you. But hopefully everybody's going to be able to kind of play with this and have some fun in this as well. So I am going to close out of that, and that is in there as a PDF for you guys. And then we are going to start in, and I'm going to just shrink my screen just a little bit so that I can see. Okay, So I normally build my rubrics in what I call my sandbox course, but I know that not all people have a sandbox. So we're actually going to be building some rubrics in our resources today, because everybody that has a Schoology account does have a resources area. And so if you come up here to the very top of your Schoology, you should see courses, groups, and resources. So when you click resources, it's going to take you to this area here, and it's going to kind of default to a home place on there for you. And to build a rubric, what I'm actually going to suggest that we do is we're going to build like a little mock assignment first. Okay, you don't have to, you can build a rubric just straight in here, but for kind of the sake of kind of walking everything through for everyone, we are going to build a rubric, an assignment. So when you click add assignment, and again, if I'm going too fast, please let me know. And we're just going to put test rubric up there at the top, because you do have to have a name for it. Now, if you were building out a normal assignment, of course, you could put all the items that you need to in the description. You can embed pictures in there. Down at the bottom, you can attach files, hyperlinks, any resources. And when you're actually in a Schoology course, you can also record so that they can hear your questions and you reading the instructions. So again, this is yet another reason I really like Schoology, is that it kind of keeps everything that the student might need in one area as well. Okay, you're going to scroll down to the bottom where it says rubric. So there's max points and then rubric, and it's going to say create a new rubric or copy from resources. And we're going to actually create a new rubric. So while everyone's pulling that up, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Genevieve. You asked if students can see their data as well. So students cannot see their data when it comes to that mastery, but those are some talking points that sometimes I pull with my students. And I'm like, hey, you know, this is what I'm seeing reoccurring. So it does allow me to have those conversations with them, but they cannot see their own data. At least not with the settings that my district have. Okay. And then Coleman Thurston, will the video be available after today? Yes, I will definitely have this available for you guys, or I can always re-record it for you. So I'm open to that as well. All right. And then this is the part where some of you guys that had the questions about how do you translate these to like grades and things of that nature, this is where that's going to come into play. So the first thing that we're going to do is up here at the top where it says rubric title, we are going to put test rubric because it's going to go with this assignment. And then this is the default view for a rubric. So it does automatically start with your criteria on the left-hand side. It has your grading scale, which it starts with a 4 and it goes all the way down to 1. And they have the automatic titles of excellent, good, satisfactory, and needs improvement. Now, again, one of the things I really like about Schoology is that even though it gives us a starting place for this, it definitely allows for you to create whatever it is that you're wanting to do. So, for instance, if we are going to, let's play with adding a learning objective, right? So you have criteria here and you have learning objectives. Criteria are just going to pull up blank tiles like this for you as you press that button. If you press too many, of course, what you can do is on the far right, it will delete the criteria rows for you. We are actually going to, and you have to have at least one, so you can't delete this top one just yet. If you come here to where it says learning objectives and you press that button, it comes up automatically with add learning objectives. Now, it does have them listed here as custom learning objectives in case you've built any on your own, Common Core, Next Gen Science Standards, and so on. And at the very bottom are the state standards. So I want you to go down to where it says state standards. And because Schoology does pick up on where you're at with your particular account, Texas is right up here at the top for you. And if you click on Texas, it's going to give you the essential knowledge and skills, pre-kindergarten guidelines, STAR guidelines, and then, of course, the TEKS for CTE. So depending on what your content is, you are welcome to play at this point with it, but I'm going to go into the essential knowledge and skills for a purpose of the demonstration. So if you want to keep following along with me, that is perfectly fine as well. So what you're going to see in here is you have actually several different versions of the TEKS, because as they update TEKS, they do upload them into the system again, but they don't delete the old ones. So you have the 2008 version of ELA and reading, and you have the 2017 version. Same with math and science, and then you see social studies and so on. So if you come down, they have just about everything that you could see in there. So I'm going to go to my old stomping grounds, and I'm going to come down to theater. Once you click into the subject area, they do list them by the grade levels, and they start with kindergarten up at the top, and then they go down into the middle school areas, and then your high school, and then some of your specialties like musical theater and technical theater. So we're going to go to my 8th graders in middle school 3. And as we go in there, now you will see that it has each of the standards. It has the main strand here. So this is the first standard for theater 6th through 8th grade, point 1, and it's talking about the foundations. Well, as you click in there, it then breaks it down to each of the stems for that particular standard. So it has 8.1 point A, it has B, and so on. So say that I am going to be assessing some warm-ups and some characterization for my kids. So I can actually click multiple standards at this point, and I can do add learning objectives. And you will see here on my test rubric that it automatically added each one of those standards for me and populated the rows. So that makes it really nice. It makes it kind of easy. And it makes it where whatever the scale is, it's going to automatically bring those down for it. So right now our rubric is at a total of 12 points. Now, as we go in, this is where you can start using some of that other language, and you can really flesh out what the students are supposed to be able to do in order to achieve this high ranking, right? So we talked about using the grading scale as advanced up at the top. So I start by changing like my first word to advanced, and then I usually put a hyphen or a colon, and then I start describing what does that look like for this particular item. So with that, evaluates characterization using emotional and sensory recall. I would then put in here, student is able to, and then I would flush it out. Just like what we were talking about earlier with the success criteria. If you're not familiar with learning intentions and success criteria is usually phrased as student is able to such and such. And it gives a description about what it is that the student should be able to do in order to say, yes, I understand this particular element, right? And so this is definitely a way that you can start pulling that in there. You can then go in and keep changing them to whatever it is that you're wanting to do for it. And then I'm usually pretty specific about like what it is. I use some of the key phrases like always or thoroughly understands. And then I change that as I go down levels to sometimes student mostly understands and on downwards. And so I'm very like specific in like how does that change from this area to this next one, right? Now, say I needed another level in here. Well, it gives you 4 automatically to start. And if you'll notice, you see that little plus sign that comes up in between the two cells. If you click on there, it will add another level for you. So now that top row actually has 5 places. Okay. Now, one thing to note is that when you are changing the numbers up at the top in Schoology, it will automatically realign. So if I change this to 5 now, it automatically pulls that 5 cell up to the front area. Okay. So it does automatically renumber those alignments, so you don't have to like worry about having to switch them around or anything like that. So that's kind of nice. And you notice that once I added in that 5, this down here all of a sudden automatically started changing for me as well. So as you're going through and building your scale or your scores, that total points is going to be as if the student has gotten the top level of each one of the criterias. So that's also, if you're building like out 100-point scales and things of that nature, this also can help you out a lot in trying to figure out, okay, well, what does this actually need to be in order for me to get that for kind of some easy grading, right? And I'm going to stop there real quick and see if anybody has any questions just on this part. We're not done yet, but this is definitely some of the key things that I wanted to kind of go over first before we start diving into how to really customize your grading scale for you or your grading rubric. Okay. Not seeing any. I'm going to go back to Shakiva's question that she had just a little while ago, and that was about trying to blend the two assessments between grading both product and grading learning. So I understand that that is key to some people's grading and things that they need for their students to understand, such as punctuation, grammar, and things of that nature. That's definitely something that I also grade my students on with their rubrics, just because I'm trying to get them prepared for their post-secondary academic readiness. And it's a big deal for me that they're using proper punctuation and grammar, some academic language, and things of that nature. I also put in there, just for my own sake and to kind of help me out with my grading, I put my late work scale in there as well. And so I'm actually going to show you how you can do that. So down here, I'm actually going to add criteria. I'm not going to add a learning objective this time because this is not going to be something that I'm truly assessing them on. This is more so a functionality portion. So I'm going to add criteria, and this is going to be timeliness. And down in the description, I'm going to put, did the student by the deadline? So I do phrase that as a question for them. And my late work policy is if they turn in on time, of course, they get full points. And then the good old standard, it is -10 each day. And then after the third day, all of my assignments in Schoology lock. So they are not able to turn in after the third day. Because again, I'm trying to get them. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to let you know you have 10 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So in here, what I actually do is I use this as a different type of grading scale. And so one thing I found out about Schoology is you can actually put negative points in here. So when it comes in, I will put 0 for the on time. I then will do, coming over here, -10, -20, and -30. Because by the time I finish building out my rubric, it will be worth 100 points. So that's why I go ahead and use those -10, -20, -30, right? And then I come in here and I do put student turned in 1 day late. Again, so that whenever I'm grading and if a parent is ever coming in here and looking at this, then it is very clear to them why they're getting points taken off because it's right here in the rubric. And before anybody gets me for getting my S on my days. All right, got it. So again, yes, you can have these type things on there. So it does also help out for when you're grading because if I don't have this on there and a student turns it in late, sometimes I forget to go take the points off or like I'm having to make note of it in other places. So now it's strictly right here on the same place for the grade. So once you have played with your rubric and you've kind of worked out all the things that you want, you can click create. And now any learning objectives that you have are down here at the bottom, including the one that we created that says timeliness. Now, since we are going to kind of be switching modes here for a second, it is definitely going to be one of those things too where maybe you're not done creating a rubric. Maybe you have to stop in the middle of it, right? Well, again, with Schoology, one of the great things is you can come right back in here and you can continue to edit. This is a live, what I like to call a live save. And so just like when you're working in the cloud for Office or your OneDrive or anything like that, or Google Drive, it does save it as you're working on it. So that's also one of the really cool things about this, where you don't have to worry about losing all your work. And again, I tend to do these things in my resources or in my sandbox so that I have it all finished out before I ever put it into where students can see it. Okay. So now that we have this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this to our particular course that we're working in. So I'm going to just put it into, why did I get this grade for today? And then see where it says copy source rubric. So that means it's going to copy the rubric that's attached to this assignment. As I come back over, and I see this item on here, one thing that I always like to do is, if you'll notice, guys, now if you click into this assignment, which is in our folder for this session, you can see the rubric yourselves. So again, that's one of the kind of the great functions of Schoology is whenever you're building an assignment or a rubric, and you have a rubric attached, there is a little box right here to the side by scale or rubric that says show to students. And so with that clicked on there, then the students can kind of see the rubric and they can self-assess. I used to use this when I taught theater, is after we had like a performance piece, part of the student performance was they had their performance on there, and then I had a little subsection down at the bottom that had a part for a written critique of one of their peers, and part of the instruction was they used the rubric that I used to assess in when they were making their own critique of one of their classmates. And so that was something that they were able to go back and kind of use that language and say, okay, this is what I saw, this is what I would have rated them, and so on. And so it really took that understanding level for my students to the next part of it. So that was one of the things that I really, really liked about that. Okay. All right. I'm going to say Nolita, it says, can a teacher see the student's work strategy in a certain assessment? If so, how? Are you asking, like, can you see that it's turned in? Is that the question? If so, what you would do is just have your submissions enabled. And this is where students would turn in their work. And then as you're grading, so if anybody's willing to just kind of turn in a file real quick, once it pops up on there and you're using that to grade or assess, use the rubric to assess the students, you can actually leave notes on each one of those criteria levels about like, why did you score them in particular? And again, you can go into even more depth with that student. So if not, I think I can possibly do it. And again, if y'all have any questions while I'm uploading this file, please put them in the chat. I would greatly appreciate it. But as I was saying, whenever I found Schoology Rubrics, what I noticed is not only did my own teaching and professionalism when it comes to the rubrics and understanding of what I was assessing my students on went up, but my students' understanding definitely went up as well. So it definitely was something that I found very valuable, and I really thought was what's taken my stuff to the next level. So
All right, Ashley, we have 2 minutes left.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. So Julie, thank you so much for doing this. So Julie submitted something for us. So if we were coming in and grading this item, let me just pop a grading in here. Boop. You see now that the rubric is in here. So as I'm going through and clicking, notice that it automatically populates for me. And then what I can do is on this little bubble at the end of the criteria row, I can tell her what it is that I was looking for or which it was that she was missing. And again, I give praise to my students in this area, as well as give them some areas of growth. And then just to kind of follow up, I do always tell my students, look at the rubric feedback so that they know where to go to kind of see what it is that I assess them on. And I'm going to guess my time.
Thank you so much. I know you could keep going on, but everybody join us for Ashley's next session, Session 7, she's got one coming up at 2 o'clock called Teachers Need Feedback to Schoology Lesson Plan Course and Feedback Protocol with Rubrics. So join us at her 2 o'clock session. Thank you so much, Ashli. Viewers, your password for your certificate is encourage. It is case sensitive, so make sure you get that copy down. That is all. And again, thank you so much. I did not even know you could assign negative points in rubrics. So thank you. Pro tip right there. Awesome. All right. That is the end of this broadcast. And come on back to our 2 o'clock session. Thank you all.
Thank you.